I bet you've never thought about how all the US presidents might be related, but I'm about to blow your mind. We're about to uncover a web of family connections that spans centuries and includes every single person who's ever held the highest office in America. Ready for a journey through the most powerful family tree in US history? Now you might be wondering, how can all these presidents be related? Well, it's not as crazy as it sounds. Let's consider your own family tree for a second. If you go back far enough, you're bound to find some surprising connections. The same is true for presidents, but on a much bigger scale. Let's start with a mind-boggling fact. Did you know that all US presidents, except for Martin Van Buren, are related to each other? That's right. 44 out of 45 presidents share common ancestors. But don't worry, we're not talking about some secret presidential breeding program. It's just that when you trace family lines back far enough, connections start popping up everywhere. Let's take a quick trip through time, from George Washington all the way to Joe Biden. Each president adds a new branch to our family tree, and some of these branches are closer than you might think. For example, did you know that George Washington and James Madison were second cousins once removed? Or that Franklin D. Roosevelt was related to a whopping 11 other presidents? And, these connections aren't just about blood relations. Many presidents are linked through marriage, too. For instance, Richard Nixon was a seventh cousin 3 times removed of his predecessor, Lyndon B. Johnson. It's like a big, complicated game of 6 degrees of presidential separation. Now let's talk about one of the most famous presidential families, the Adams clan. John Adams, our second president, and his son John Quincy Adams, our 6th president, are the most well-known father-son duo in presidential history. But their family's political influence didn't stop there. John Adams' great-great-grandson Charles Francis Adams III became Secretary of the Navy. And get this, the Adams family has connections to Presidents James Madison, William Howard Taft, and both Bushes. It's like they had a family business, and that business was running the country. You've probably heard people say, "Oh, he's my cousin," about someone they're distantly related to. Well, if presidents said that, they'd be saying it a lot. James Madison and Zachary Taylor were second cousins. William Henry Harrison and Benjamin Harrison were grandfather and grandson, and these are just the tip of the iceberg. Franklin D. Roosevelt and Theodore Roosevelt were 5th cousins. But wait, there's more. FDR's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, was actually Theodore Roosevelt's niece. Talk about keeping it in the family, right? Speaking of the Roosevelts, let's dive deeper into their family web. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd, shared more than just a last name. As it turns out, the Roosevelt family tree includes branches that connect to George Washington, John Adams, James Madison, William Henry Harrison, and Benjamin Harrison. It's like they were collecting presidential relatives. And here's a fun fact: FDR was related to 11 other US presidents. That's almost a quarter of all the presidents we've ever had. Now let's fast forward to more recent history and talk about the Bush family. George H.W. Bush and his son George W. Bush are the second father-son presidential duo in U.S. history. But their family's political roots go much deeper. George H.W. Bush's father, Prescott Bush, was a U.S. senator, and if we trace the family tree back, we find connections to Franklin Pierce, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, and yes, even Barack Obama. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but with presidents. Now you might be thinking, okay, some of these make sense, but surely not all presidents can be related, right? Well, prepare to be surprised. Even presidents you'd never expect to be related often share some distant connection. For example, Barack Obama and George W. Bush are 11th cousins. And remember Martin Van Buren, the only president not directly related to the others? Well, he's not completely off the hook. Through marriage, he's connected to Theodore Roosevelt. It's like the presidential family tree just refuses to let anyone go. Here's something that might blow your mind. Most US presidents are related to European royalty. This royal connection was discovered by a 12-year-old girl named Bridget d'Avignon, who spent months building a giant family tree. Talk about a school project gone wild. It just goes to show that history is full of surprises, and you never know what you might find if you start digging. These connections give us a unique perspective on American history. They show us that the pool of people who've led our country isn't as diverse as we might think. It raises questions about power, influence, and the nature of American democracy. But it's not all serious. These family ties also give us a fun way to look at history, making it more personal and relatable. Remember, history isn't just about dates and events, it's about people, and sometimes those people are a lot more connected than we realize. Keep exploring, and who knows what other historical surprises you might uncover.